I'm your host, Renee Kranz. In studio with me today is Pat Cordell. She is a consecrated virgin for the Diocese of Sioux Falls. I have never met Pat. We just met a few minutes ago. She seems very lovely. I'm very much looking forward to hearing about, we're going to talk about how she got her call to the vocation of consecrated virgin and just about her life and how that works in someone's regular life. So welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you came in today. I kind of called you out of the blue and you're like, do I really want to do this?
Yes.
But you agreed and I'm really glad you did. So will you start first by just telling us a little bit about you, your family, where you grew up, those kind of things?
I was born in Watertown.
Me too.
Harold and Marge Cordell. And I have 8 brothers and sisters.
Wow. Okay.
I am number 7 of the 8.
Okay.
We all reside in Sioux Falls.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. Out of all those kids, all in Sioux Falls. I've not heard that very often.
No. My mom died when I was 17.
Okay.
My dad died here in 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, then in 2009, I got the call to be a consecrated.
Okay.
Well, I received the call to be his.
Okay. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. I want to kind of hear how that came about. Did you go to college or anything?
Just 3 years. I never graduated, but I went to Southeast area of OTEC and got medical secretary degree.
Okay. And you're a nurse aide now?
Nurse aide now.
At Sanford?
Yes.
Okay. What does a nurse aide do?
Take care of the patients.
Okay.
Doing their vitals.
So a lot of similar things to what a nurse would do. Is there what is the difference? The most notable difference to most people, noticeable?
They administer the medications.
Oh, okay.
And yeah.
So you can do a lot of things that the nurses do, and there's probably just a few things you don't do. I'm guessing.
You don't. Yeah. You don't do the meds and the IVs and that.
It's okay. That's probably the not so fun part.
And all that. But yes, you do the bedside stuff.
Sure.
The caring for the patient.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. How long have you been doing that?
13 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Great. So, you said you just got your call as a consecrated virgin just 10 years ago? 15. What did you say, 2006?
2009.
So it's been not quite 15 years.
Right.
Did you have a different plan before that? When you were young, were you hoping to get married? Was that never kind of in the cards?
I always said I wanted to be married.
Okay.
And have more kids than my mom. But I don't know. As a little girl, I always desired also to be a religious sister.
Oh, interesting.
But never ventured out of that to pursue it.
Mm-hmm. Were you around a lot of religious sisters when you were young, and that's where that came from, or?
No. I have had 2 religious sisters who were aunts.
Oh, okay.
One on my mom's side, one on my dad's side.
Ah.
The one on my dad's side, I was more, had a better relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
She would come home in the summers to my grandma's house.
Mm-hmm.
We would have lunch, and then she'd always go out for a walk and take my younger brother and I with.
Sure.
She would always talk about her life at her convent and that, and what she was always doing. And so that always sparked an interest in me, but never ventured out to go to a convent to experience it in that.
Sure.
And I think I was kind of reserved because I knew it was, in a way, not where God was calling me as much as I desired that life.
Right. That's a hard thing to kind of come to, I would imagine, is even if you feel like you desired something, but you knew enough to, or you felt enough to listen to God and say, okay, that isn't the thing, even though I really want it.
Yes. And part of me, too, was the fear of disappointing my dad.
Oh, okay.
You know, because by then my mom was...
Oh, sure.
Well, I guess she wasn't out of the picture because she didn't die until I was 17. But at that point, I always wanted to be married.
Sure.
It was just after she passed away that I thought of doing religious life.
Right, right.
But always thought that my dad would maybe discourage me.
Right.
And say, you know, I'd rather you have kids. Give me grandchildren.
Sure. But you had 8 other brothers and sisters, so surely he had grandchildren. 7, yes.
Yes. So, yes. And after he passed, I realized that
sure. Yeah.
He wouldn't have. He would have been proud.
Right. Right. And I'm sure he is.
Oh,
yeah.
I can imagine. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So before you tell us how you got your call as a consecrated virgin, will you tell us what is a consecrated virgin, so we know what this is? Because I think a lot of people don't know what this is. There's only 2 in the entire diocese, so we need more.
Yes. Amen. Consecrated virgin is the most earliest way of life that women could give themselves to Christ.
Right.
Before religious life existed.
Because this was even during Jesus' time. Many of the women who followed him were consecrated virgins, the way I understand it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So after, several hundred of years after Jesus, then the Saint Benedict and Saint Francis and Saint Dominic came forward with the rules of life that they wanted. And that's how the religious sisters developed.
Yep.
But as far as consecrated virginity, it existed, with Christ.
Right.
And actually, Mary was the first.
Okay.
When she gave her yes.
Sure. That makes sense.
As we know is
right.
The church teachings that she was a virgin from birth as well.
Right.
And that's one of the differences, too, with when you compare religious life and consecrated life. A religious sister does not have to be a virgin from birth.
Oh, right.
They could be married
and then become a religious sister later after, if they're a widow or so on, something like that, correct?
Right. Yeah. And if they're a divorce, they'd have to get their annulment before.
But a consecrated virgin is a virgin for life, before and after.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a big difference.
That's, yes. Another difference between the two is the diocese will support the religious sister financially. Financially, the consecrated virgin must support herself.
Okay. But you do, the way I understand it, you do take, maybe this isn't the right way to say it, but you take direction from the bishop? Is that the right way to say it?
So as far as superiors go, the religious sister obviously has Mother Superior, who is the one who directs the religious sister. As far as the consecrated virgin, we don't have a superior.
Right.
We do place our hands in the hands of the bishop.
Okay.
Saying that we will be obedient to him and his successors.
Right.
So as far as your superior as a consecrated virgin is the bishop.
Okay.
And your spiritual director.
Oh, okay.
So
who would not necessarily be the same person.
No.
Right.
Your bishop, obviously, as we all know, is quite busy and can't.
Right. He does very little spiritual direction.
The virgin on a monthly basis.
Right.
So you have a spiritual director who is the one who is meeting with you monthly.
Sure.
And they actually take on that spiritual father role as well as with the bishop.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To guide you, direct you.
So obviously you aren't assigned someplace like a diocesan priest is. But
no.
Do you meet with the bishop off and on and kind of talk about things you can do? How does that work?
Or you should meet with him yearly.
Okay.
And sometimes that doesn't fit into the scheme.
Sure.
But within a year or two, you should always be meeting with him.
Okay.
And you just give him insight of what you've been doing since your last. And obviously, if you have the need of guidance in a specific area, you would voice that as well.
Yep. Okay. So then tell us how you got your call. Because I'm sure there's a story behind it. Maybe it did just come out of nowhere, but I suspect there's a story behind it. So will you tell us how that happened?
Yeah. So in 2009, March, I was sleeping that night and woke up about 3-ish, being called by him to be his and only his. And it was like not a question. It was just an automatic yes. I proclaimed that to him and then, just praised him. And
right.
Prior to that, though, I had been praying to have him put someone in my life if he was calling me to be married.
Sure.
And I know aunts and cousins, they're like, why don't you just go to the bar? And it's like, to me, that I didn't, I don't drink, number one. So I didn't want, not that everybody who enters a bar is, but I just never have felt comfortable in the bar setting. So
it's probably not the best place to find a spouse.
Well,
I think there are better places.
Probably not.
It's not that you can't find one there.
Yeah, so I just never pursued that.
Sure.
And so with the prayer then came in March, him asking me to be his.
Yeah.
So I didn't hesitate on his call.
Yeah.
And took it, not knowing what. And that morning, then I, in a way, rushed to get a ring to signify that I was spoken for.
Right.
And wore it on my ring finger of where a bride would wear her. And then just kept praying and asking where he was guiding me.
Because you did not actually go through your consecration right away, correct?
No.
Right.
It was
a little while.
Many years later.
So why was that? What is there like a time when you're kind of discerning during that time? Okay.
So from there, I just, kept asking him, God, where he was placing me and what he was calling me to. Because in the depth of my heart, I knew it wasn't being a religious sister.
Right.
I wasn't being called to leave my family and join a community. But I was being called to that way of life.
Right.
So I just kept praying. And then I was talking with my associate pastor, and he said, I think you're being called to some sort of religious life. And I want you to meet Therese Ivers, who is a consecrated virgin for the diocese. And at the time, she was the director of vocations for this part of the diocese.
Yep.
And then he said he wanted me to also meet with Sister Pamela, who was the vocation director for the northern part of the diocese.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he said, I know you're not being called to, that you say you're not being called to religious life, but I still want you to meet with her too.
Yeah.
And that was all he said. So I went home and I'm like, consecrated virgin, what is that?
Is that?
I mean, I knew what it was because obviously Agnes, Lucy,
right.
the early virgins, you know, you knew that. But as a child, you were only told motherhood and religious sister. So I'm like, I had no clue that that was even an option.
Right.
So I went home and I Googled consecrated virgin, and I got the association's website for the United States and started reading that, read a couple of sentences, and knew instantly that that was where he was calling me. So then I set up an appointment and met with Therese and
went from there
and went to the information conference, which is another way of finding out if it's really
yeah, because you don't have a community to go to, so you've got to have some way to discern that.
There is no community per se, as there is with a religious sister who would go to the Benedictine house.
Cool. So then when were you actually consecrated? That was 2016, you said? 17. Okay. And is that what month do they usually do that? Or is it just whenever?
When your bishop, when your bishop
says, "You're ready."
chooses, he chooses the date.
Okay.
For me, he chose the queenship. So the 22nd
And that was
of
under
August.
Bishop Swain.
Yes, I was consecrated under Bishop Swain.
Sure. What was that like that day for you?
The most beautiful of days. It was just obviously a lot of nerves, but it was just immense beauty and that I was being shown.
Any fear at that time?
Then?
Or right before?
Maybe just messing up on my responses
Sure.
to the bishop.
There's always that nerve for sure.
Right?
But I bet you did just fine.
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left, but I kind of want to know, like, how does this work into your regular life? You're a nurse aide. You kind of live your life like the rest of us, but there's this other piece. So how does that fit into your regular life?
As a nurse aide, I was always open of what I was doing, telling them, my director from the start, that I was going to be doing this. And obviously, I work at a non-Catholic hospital.
Right.
And so it was a lot of education, evangelization, because they don't know the Catholic way. There are some Catholics that I work with, but for the most part. So the evangelization education to them, because they wanted to know, they were very supportive and still are.
Good.
As far as how it intertwines, I'm fortunate that I work on labor and delivery.
Oh, yeah.
So I work solely, majority women. There are a few doctors that are males, and then, of course, the male babies that get born. But for the most part, I'm dealing with women, and which is a godsend.
Yeah.
But then, and we do see mainly joy, but there are times that there are the sadness and it's those moments that they know. And I'm constantly, as a virgin, praying anyways, just by little things.
Yeah, because you guys do like Liturgy of the Hours daily, correct?
Morning and evening prayer.
Morning and evening prayer.
And then, so I'm constantly praying in my head too to him. But then at those times, they either call out and say, "Hey, could you be praying for this situation?" Or I know also with working there that, okay, we're in a difficult time right now. So I start the prayers. And
that's really good. That's a good place for you to be, because there's lots of opportunity for prayers for people who are struggling. You know, like you said, you're in labor and delivery, but there's plenty of struggle there too.
Yes, yes.
Well, Pat, we are out of time. So I really appreciate you coming in. I'm glad you were able to tell us what this is, how you got your call. Because I think, like I said, a lot of even Catholics, I did not know what a consecrated virgin was before I came to work here. And I think it's really something that if people knew more about, we might actually have more of them in the diocese. So hopefully there'll be some women who are like, hey, that's the thing, just like for you. So thanks for coming in today.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. If you haven't found us on social media, you can always find us at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube, and also now on Rumble. All of our videos are on both places. And you can also find us at sfcatholic.org anytime. That's it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.